In order to develop Java programs, the first thing you need is the JDK, or the Java Development Kit, and you should have already installed that. If you haven't installed it at this point, you should stop the video, go back to Canvas and review that information, and come back here when you have that all set up. In this video, we're going to install an IDE called Visual Studio Code. An IDE is it's an integrated development environment, and it's really just a fancy text editor. As opposed to something like Notepad, which we could use for our Java programs, an IDE is going to provide a lot of assistance to us. It's going to visually make it easier to see our code. It's going to run our program for us whenever we want to test it, things like that. There are many IDEs out there, and there are a lot of very good IDEs out there. I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code in pretty much all the videos that I post for this class. And if you're using Visual Studio Code and you have trouble, there's a good chance that I'll be able to help you with it. So I think it's a really good choice. You don't have to use it. The code you produce is the same no matter what IDE you use, so I won't actually know the difference. But unless you have a compelling reason to use something else, I'm going to recommend that you go with Visual Studio Code. Very quickly, I want to point out that Visual Studio Code is not the same product as Visual Studio. They're both from Microsoft. They're both programming tools. We want to stick with Visual Studio Code. It is free and open source. It's available across platforms on Mac, Windows, and Linux. It's good for a very wide variety of languages, so it's a good one to get to know, even if it's not necessarily the very best one out there at any particular thing. If you know Visual Studio Code, you can use it for pretty much any programming language that's out there. The website to download it is code.visualstudio.com, and again, I want to emphasize that we need to have that code in there because we don't want to end up on the full Visual Studio download site. So at the time I'm recording it, this is what Visual Studio Code webpage looks like. There should be a prominent download link. It's going to attempt to detect what operating system you're on, and so it has detected that I'm on Windows right now. If it detects wrong, or for some other reason you want to look around, you can click on other platforms. But for Windows, I'm going to go ahead and download the Windows program. I've already downloaded this in the interest of time. So it's going to save a file to your computer, probably the downloads folder, and it's an executable. So I'm just going to double click on that to start the installation process. Just like other programs, you're going to have, you're going to have to agree to some terms. I think we can stick with our default settings here. If you want to have a desktop icon, you can do that. But I'm just going to go ahead and click through and install this with all of the default settings. It's not a very big program, so it doesn't take too long. And when it's done, I'm going to go ahead and let it launch the program. Once Visual Studio Code has opened, we have this welcome screen that essentially has kind of a wizard that would take you through setting up a bunch of settings and configuring it the way you want. You can see it starts with a theme, and you're certainly welcome to go through all of those if you want. You may not understand a lot of what it's asking you. I'm going to skip this for now, and I'm going to close that welcome tab up at the top. And I'm going to direct you to this navigation bar over on the left. And for example, the top one is an Explorer. This is where we can deal with our files, and we'll use that a lot. You'll see it in an upcoming video. The one we're interested in at the moment is down at the bottom here. It's called extensions. And so extensions are like plugins. They're things you can add on to Visual Studio. And one of the nice things about Visual Studio is that it's very modular. So the program itself is pretty simple and pretty lightweight, and you can use extensions to add features that are useful to you. And foremost among that would be the support for languages that we're going to develop with. So if I'm going to be developing in Java, then I'm going to come up here to the search bar, and I'm going to start typing Java. Oops, I missed kind of with my click there. And just I'm expanding that a little bit so we can see it more clearly. What we're interested in is the extension pack for Java, which is a handful of different features that can all get installed at once. And there are likely to be a handful of things with similar names. So I'm just checking that this is published by Microsoft. Many of these are published by the community or by other folks, but this one is from Microsoft. It's got the little blue check. It's been, at this point, it's been downloaded nearly 30 million times. That's a good sign that we've got the right one, right? It's popular at least. So I'm going to go ahead and install this by clicking the install button. All right, so it has finished installing that. It did take a little bit of time there, so I cut the video, but at this point it has installed that extension pack for Java, which has added a bunch of features that are going to make our life a little bit easier. One of the things you might notice right away is that it's telling me I need to install a JDK, and I should have done that already. The idea here is that it hasn't detected that yet, and so it's assuming that you need to do that. You should be fine. In fact, at this point, if you're looking at a screen like this, then you should be all set as far as downloading and installing Visual Studio Code. And in a separate video, we will take a look at how to use it on a basic level and create a simple program.